Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I am thrilled today to be having Miss Jessi Sheridan here with me. She has over 16 years of career experience and a very vast world and a very difficult world. People and business operations, program management, leadership, and organizational development. Those are a lot of different things to cover. Jessi, did I cover all the areas?
I think so.
She's also founder and creator of Habituelle. It's a women's leadership, storytelling, and empowerment platform, and she's also the vice president of a leadership experience at the Leader's Edge. So we're gonna be hopping into all of this today. But Jessi, just thank you for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me, Danielle.
Yeah, I do want to get into, backing it up some years. What got you into this world? What called you to be doing this work?
Yeah. So it's funny. I always thought I wanted to be an interior designer, and I was, the child in the third grade drawing floor plans when I should have been paying attention in class. And I got my undergrad degree in interior design. And though when I was in my undergrad, I joined a sorority
Okay.
and I just loved the community that was created within and the sense of belonging that came along with being a part of something bigger than myself. And so when I graduated from college, I actually went on to work for my sorority. And during that year, I traveled to 32 different colleges and universities, talked, spoke to, consulted with, thousands of women across the country. And, I'm only a couple of years older than the women I was speaking to, but it was all about developing their confidence and their leadership skills and, being, leaders within their community. And so I loved that year so much. I was tired of living out of a suitcase, but I loved that year so much. And I thought, how can I keep doing this? I really felt as though it was filling my heart where interior design really wasn't. I
Yeah.
was good at it, but it really wasn't filling my cup and my heart. And so I ended up going into higher education, thinking I always wanted to work with college students. And I did I got my master's in higher education and worked with college students for about, I don't know, 8 years. And then I started to realize that I really think that the subset of people I love working with the most are women, career-driven women who are, further in their careers than undergraduate students. And so I started dipping my toe into the a startup space, for profit, nonprofit, and just kind of throughout my career so far have really been in different industries, but it always kind of came back to leadership. It always came back to giving people the tools to be the best version of themselves and to show up with confidence and to show up with poise and knowledge.
Yeah.
And so while that's not entirely people operations, I also have an operations side of my brain.
Yeah.
So it's the people part I love, and it's the operations part that I love. And I think that that comes back to my desire for like consistency and desire for continual improvement and for myself and for other people, and really thinking about how do we take something and make it a better something.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I got where I am today.
I love it. How did all of that translate then to founding and creating Habituelle
Yeah.
in this platform that you've done?
Yeah. So that came, just 2 years ago.
Okay.
Habitual started, and I was kind of in a unique place in my career where I had been doing, I'd been in the same job for I think it was at that point about 6 years. And I just needed a creative outlet that I didn't feel that I was getting necessarily at the company that I was at. And not to their fault. I don't believe that my employer should be the only thing that is filling my cup. And so I love talking to people. So thanks for talking with me today. And I'm also a naturally very curious person, Danielle. I love learning about people and I love thinking, going back to the community aspect, how are we creating a community right here in my backyard that can help people leverage their leadership and help people feel heard. And the reality is, in 2 years ago, we were coming off of a tough summer for women where Roe v. Wade had just been overturned. And there was a lot of, for myself, a lot of concern of like, why does this seem like we're going backwards in
Yeah,
time? And what control, power do I have to make a difference? I knew I couldn't make a difference on Capitol Hill. Like it's just not where I am.
yeah,
But what can I do here in Philadelphia? And so I thought, well, let's combine this creative outlet that involves curiosity and start to give women a place to tell their story and be heard. And so it really was supposed to be a 1 year project where, just get it out of my system.
yes,
I'll talk to as many women as I can, but no goal set in
yeah.
mind. And we just passed the 2 year mark, and I just passed interviewing my 165th person. And um, I don't know when it's going to end. I keep saying that it will end when I'm not having fun anymore, but I know it's having an impact. It is creating a sense of belonging. It's allowing women to feel less alone in their challenges. And we get together once a year to celebrate, and we just had the anniversary party last month, and there were 95 women out of 165 there supporting each other, networking in like the least networking type
Yes.
of environment because every woman who's showing up believes in the power of
Yeah,
supporting each other. And so it's just an awesome night of connection. So
love that.
that's sort of where it started. That's where we are now. Where it's going in the future, I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful that we figure that out soon.
Fantastic. When you are working through these leadership exercises, like what is the content base, I guess is the easiest way to say, like what are you working through? Do you have classes, courses? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. So there's the platform itself, which
Okay.
is really a social platform.
Yeah.
Let's see. We're on LinkedIn and we're on Instagram. And that is a one-on-one interview.
Okay.
I transcribe the interview and then we'll place, specific pieces out from the interview on the social outlets. The other side of Habitual is things like last night we hosted an event where there was a panel discussion on the overcoming mom guilt.
Yeah.
And so the women who were on the panel were women who I have interviewed, who have talked about mom guilt as
Yeah.
as something that they battle with.
Yep.
And so we then are now educating people on different topic areas. There's also opportunities for speaking engagements and writing on the blog. And so I like to give, again, at the end of the day, it's a platform for women's voices to be heard. The modality changes,
Yes.
whether it's
Yeah.
an interview, a panel, a small group wisdom circle, or things like that.
I love that. And I love this all keeps coming back around to community too. And I think that's so important. And I've had several conversations this year where I've asked the question, I'm like, do we feel like community has become a buzzword like networking has? But
Hmm.
some people have given me great answers that it depends on the community that is being
Yeah.
built. And I think in higher terms, sometimes it is being overused in places that it shouldn't be. But I love that this keeps coming back to community here and finding common ground that you have helped create in a way in the community that you have.
Yeah. I think on the exterior, a lot of us feel things like fear, shame, guilt.
Yeah.
And where does that come from, Danielle? If you dig deeper, and like my gal Brene Brown knows this much better than I do, but you dig deeper and you dig deeper, at the bottom, at the core of who we are, we want to feel like we belong. We don't want to be alone. And so coming out of a pandemic, which feels like a lifetime ago and also yesterday, um, people were seeking a sense of belonging. They were really seeking more connections. And whether you call it community or you call it whatever you want to call it, it's ultimately at its core, it's a sense of belonging. And there's a lot of data out there right now on this loneliness epidemic. People feel innately lonely. And if I can help with that epidemic by bringing women together to support each other, I've done my job. I feel really confident about that.
Yep. It's amazing. I love that you point out that pandemic because it is, even in a crowded room, sometimes you feel incredibly lonely just because of the seat that you're sitting in. And
Mhm.
it definitely has taken a toll on people the last even 4 years since we've been, remote working and in a pandemic and all these things. Coming together with people certainly does help, but it's definitely taken its toll on people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I want to, from the first guest to the 165th, it's been, I'm sure, a roller coaster of emotions and rides there. Has there been things that you've learned over the years about yourself
Mm.
from the people that you've talked to that you've like, I've grown in this way, I've grown in this way?
Well, I think the most obvious for me is my public speaking. I can talk to anyone now at this point. Um,
Love it.
and I've learned that I am not a surface level communicator. I am the person in the room that's like, tell me your values, like right after we meet each other, because I feel like there's so much I could learn about somebody. I don't like to keep it at the surface level, but I think more deeply it is that none of us want to be alone.
Yeah.
We don't want to feel like we're the only one in our problem. We all have an inner critic, a voice in our head that's, says some not kind things
Yes.
sometimes. And I would also say that fear is a huge inhibitor to my success, to most people's success. And it is, if you are able to take just one step forward, that's one step further than you were yesterday,
Absolutely.
another step tomorrow. You don't have to do, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be today just that one step. And I would say that, there are lots of lessons. Every interview I learned something, and up to this point I remember most of my interviews. Like I can quote women from their interviews, but there's just been some miraculous takeaways. I feel like I'm doing a dissertation at this point, and so many of these women could be cited in my dissertation for the powerful things that they've brought to the table. And often, it's interesting because they'll show up and say, I don't really feel like I'm a leader. I don't really feel like, you're going to really learn much from me. And my job is to hold up the mirror and show them, like, look at all that you said and you shared and the wisdom that's pouring out of you. So I would say that's probably the last thing. There are many more, but the last thing I'll share is how most people do not see themselves the
Yeah.
way that other people see them. And we would really benefit from saying, hey, Danielle, I think you're such a rock star. I
Yeah.
really love that you do this and that how much you care about people and sharing their story, right? Like giving others feedback that is really helpful to their growth.
And I want to get into that feedback because I think there are some people out there who hate that criticism or that feedback.
Yeah.
They feel like it is an X on the things that they have done. But how can feedback be a good thing for people? And how can they help take it in the right way?
So positive, and we'll start with the critical feedback.
Yep.
So when you receive criticism or, constructive feedback, it can really rattle you. It rattles me.
Yeah.
And then the inner critic starts, oh, I should have done this. And the
Yep.
word should, right? You end up shoulding on yourself because you should. And it just becomes too much,
Yeah.
and can be very overwhelming. But if you have tools in your toolbox that allow you to say, okay, that's feedback. what do I want to do with this feedback? And if you have data that shows that you can take that feedback and you will still be competent, you will still be successful, you are still a worthy and excellent human being. So I have what's called a dig folder. It stands for Damn, I'm Good. And it's anytime I receive positive feedback or
Okay.
cards or notes, something that's going to lift my spirits when I get maybe some harsher feedback. And it serves as a reminder to me that like I am making an impact. Yes, this is feedback. It's helpful to hear. And also, I'm clearly making an impact in people's life because look at this folder. It's getting heavier every day. So being able to talk yourself off the ledge and say, and look at the data you have around you that says that just because you got this one piece of feedback doesn't discredit your entire life and career in
Yeah.
that one piece of feedback.
I relate, and I turn that into almost how this podcast with, you get a rejection letter and you feel like, oh my gosh, that's the end. I'm never going to
Mhm.
be able to get another guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then you look, to your point, you look and you say, I've done 126 episodes today. I've
Yeah.
done this many episodes. And to be able to say that I will never ever get a guest again, then I have to take myself back and have to say, we're okay. It's just one. It's not
Yeah.
the end of the world. But I love Damn, I'm Good. I That's
Yeah.
an excellent folder name.
Yeah. And I wish I could claim that I made that up, but I had a wonderful mentor years ago that said, get yourself a dig folder. And I sure enough pulled out, and like back then, it was like I pulled out a manila folder and wrote, damn, I'm good on it.
Can I tell
Um,
you though, that's where my head went when you
yeah.
said that. I was like, I actually saw you have the folder. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can be, I know people who will forward themselves emails that
Yeah.
have, things from folks. So it can be digital too, but of course mine is full of cards and different things. And I'm a printer gal, so if I get a good email, I print out that email, stuff it
Love it.
right in there.
I love that. I love that. I'm the same. Like, I've been told I'm an old soul, so I'm like print it out. I have a planner for every year. I'm a writer. I'm like I love to keep all this stuff. I'm like
Yep.
digital stuff. I still have it, but I'm like nope. Get me a. I used to have like the folders and all the binders, and I'm cleaning out my house. I'm like God, why do I have all this stuff?
I know. One day I might need that binder.
It's exactly what it is. Exactly. Um, I want to jump into some of cultivating a culture is, I feel like such a buzzword as well, especially in corporations. But when we bring it back down to women who are out there doing the damn thing, who are, wanting to make a lasting impact, how do you help cultivate a culture, a continual improvement and long lasting impact in the organizations that people work
Well, I could say for myself, as I shared a little bit earlier, I do believe in this idea of how can I be 1% better today than I was yesterday. I'm at my core a competitive person with myself, which when overused is problematic,
with? Yes.
right? Very hard on myself. But externally, it shows up as I'm the person you want on your team because I will work really hard
Yeah.
to get to the end result. For the longest time, I thought it was just because I was like a crazy Philadelphia Eagles fan, but then I started to see it as more of a strength of I don't I first of all I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm consistent with that. I'm habitual, if you will, with
Yes.
that. Um, but I also, believe it's integrity too. So I show up for myself competitively and I show up for other people because they deserve it. And so when you're creating the culture, I believe in showing up for your people. I believe that when you do show up for your people,
Yeah.
you they will see they'll be with you, right? You're linked arm to arm. And while I may have a higher title or more experience, we're a team.
Yeah.
And together we can continually improve whatever we're doing. There's always room and always space for improving, and it doesn't have to be like this huge,
Yeah.
180 turnaround. It just needs to be, something that can be incremental, taking
Yeah.
one step forward and seeing it as smaller improvements versus something radical.
First off, go birds. Go Eagles.
Thanks. We're having a tough start, but it's fine.
I love the Eagles. I had family grow up in Philadelphia, so I got a little bit of Eagles in me myself.
Yeah, good.
I got half Eagles, half Lions, so I go
That's
back.
fine. We'll take you as long as you're not like Dallas or something like
Nope,
that.
no, 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 no cowboy love here for me.
Good.
But I love the 1% better every day. And I bring it back to once again this because some people are like, "Oh, I went back and listened to one of your first episodes." I'm like, please, dear God, do not do that. I beg of you, please do not go listen to those episodes just for your sake. But I view it as every single episode I get 1% better as in myself and everything that I try to do here because I'm hoping my questions are getting better. I'm hoping that my confidence is getting better every time. I still get nervous before every interview, like, and I hope that stays because that shows that I love it. But I love the things that I get to improve on every single time, and I hope that it's making a difference every episode.
I mean, I feel like you've been doing this for your whole life. You're very natural at it. So I think it's great.
If I was ever in a room with you, you and I would be great together because I have a little bit of social anxiety, but you would bring me down and be like, okay, great, I'm okay in this room. As soon as I have that one person, I'm like, I can go talk to others, I'll be all
Yeah,
right.
good. I'm your gateway.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, Jesse's here. She's gonna get me comfortable. I'm great.
And I think that is probably my superpower, if I'm being honest, is helping people feel comfortable. Again, like for the end result of creating a sense of belonging for everybody, creating community. Everybody has a story. Like these are all kind of like my taglines, but
Yeah,
it comes down to like that's who I am at my core.
yeah.
So yeah.
I do want to we talked about community in the sense of people coming together and supporting each other, but how does community translate into, fostering leadership and business success on the flip side?
Mm. Yeah, so that I think has been something that has been really unique and awesome to see unfold. So in the 160 plus women that I've interviewed, there's women who are entrepreneurs, there are women who are in corporate America, there are stay-at-home mom. Like there's a wide range of like a diverse subset of people. And what is unique is the ability to say it's also a problem for me because I have to self manage when I'm talking with people because in my brain I'm rolling. I'm like, she's got to meet this person, this person, this person, this person, connect, 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 connect. But at the end of the day, I will, at the end of the interview, I will come back and I'll say, okay, who does this person need to meet with based off of what they've shared with me
Yeah.
and plug them in. And that actually has gotten people business, that has gotten people new opportunities, I interviewed a matchmaker who met with another person I interviewed, and now that person is dating someone. So, like, I feel really good about that I am making these connections that end up being, fostering business leads.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think many people, if you're not an entrepreneur, you have a hard time understanding that like entrepreneurs need to make money because they got to live too,
Yes.
right? And so if we're in this community and I say, "Oh, I could really, use some marketing support." Okay, well, I've interviewed 6 marketing people. Here are the marketing people that I've interviewed.
Yep.
Go utilize one of those people for your services. So it's really looking at how do we support the people that we know and are within our reach. and specifically if you can support women-owned businesses. I believe in that. Diverse women-owned businesses, especially. And so I think that there's this opportunity within this community that's forming to say, hey, I need this. Who can support me in that? And what's awesome is to see that how many women say, I can help you with that
Yeah.
without me even facilitating it. It's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So I do think while it's not a nationwide or global effort, we are creating already making a difference in Philadelphia when it comes to women supporting women, not even just for business impact, but for personal growth.
I love that. And I love that you're not even having to be the one to step up. And
Yeah.
you have that community and you've created that community of women who themselves want to step up and help in a similar way that you are stepping up for them as well. I think that's a beautiful notion. I do want to hop to Leader's Edge. How did you get to be there first of all? And
Yeah, well,
what drew you to them?
yeah, I'm smiling and lighting up because I'm loving it so much. About 2 years ago, I am really involved with the Chamber of Commerce, but at the time I was at a chamber board meeting and I sat down next to somebody, another woman who introduced herself and she said, you know, who are you and what do you do? And I said, I'm Jessi. I work in women's leadership. And she turned her whole body to me and she said, I'm Molly. I work in women's leadership. And so you know, she was a founder of the Leader's Edge and was in the midst of a succession plan. And she said, you need to meet our president, Kristen Lytle. And Kristen and I, over 2 years, stayed in contact, you know, would check in with each other here and there, see how things are going. And so when their succession plan, you know, came to an end and Kristen became the owner of the company of the Leader's Edge, she called me up and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Do you want to come work for the Leader's Edge?" And of course, I said yes. And I've been there. I started back in May,
Okay.
and my role really is to oversee our signature programs.
Okay.
So, the programs that we currently have that are out there impacting thousands of women and men, and also create new programs.
Okay.
So, looking at the market and saying, what does the market need, and how can we create programs that will bring value to up and coming leaders,
Mm.
executive leaders. We have a coaching team. So, I am certified
Okay.
executive coach. I do not do any coaching at the moment because I really kind of oversee our coaching and our programs. So it's been just kind of like the stars aligning throughout the years. Again, goes back to leadership, but it happened that I just next to the right person at the right time 2 years ago, and then just built the relationship,
Okay.
right? It wasn't a job that came to me 2 days after I sat
Yeah.
next to Molly, but it was the building of the relationship with our now CEO that I believe is an example of the power of networking and supporting each other and remaining connected over time.
Love that.
Which connect networking is not should not be so transactional. It
Yeah.
should be the development of the relationship.
Now, is the Leader's Edge country like our whole country widespread? What is the work there and how far are y'all going?
Yeah, we do have clients across the country,
Okay.
primarily working in, you know, the corporate space
Okay.
and also for large programs, internal and open to anyone, but also again, executive coaching. So those are kind of our two main buckets, large group leadership development and then executive coaching.
Okay. Very cool. Now, you said you are overseeing the coaching aspect of that. Do you have the itch to sometimes jump in and help do some of the coaching as well?
So, my favorite part of coaching is the small group work
Okay.
because I love to actually just sort of be the facilitator, prompt questions, and allow them to, like, you just see sparks flying
Yeah.
when they're learning from each other. And so recently I sat in on one of our small group coaching sessions and had my camera off, had my mic muted, and I just wanted to observe. Really, that was truly it. But yes, I was like ready to jump in, not because I wanted to take over the conversation, because I wanted to be in the conversation. I wanted to talk with these women about the challenges that they were having and share, tips and tricks that have worked for me. But I maintained, just stayed in the background. But yes, I more so want to jump in because it really is electric in these conversations, and what the women are learning, and how they're learning together is really powerful.
When you are in these smaller and groups and doing the facilitating here, when you do jump in with a question, I love how people come up with questions. How are you jumping in and being fast on your feet and kind of putting in these questions based on the conversation that's happening?
I think it's very hard to be, you're doing a great job at it, by the way. It's very hard to be an interviewer or a moderator or a facilitator if you are not present in the conversation. If you're like thinking for the next question, you miss what's happening in the foreground. And so being able to train your brain to just be in the moment, listen to what they're saying instead of trying to think about what your next move is,
Yep.
just being present right there.
Yep.
And that can be hard because people want to be able to respond swiftly and quickly. But what I've also learned in my coaching training is that it's okay to have silence. It's
Mm,
okay to just pause, recalibrate,
yep.
and take your time. There's a lot of power in the pause as
Yeah.
well.
It is one when I started out, that active listening piece.
Hmm.
I'm like, I was terrible at it. And so I had a guest who we really spent a lot of time talking about that. And from there on out, I was like, sit here and focus. And then when I felt my mind going different places, I'm like, nope, focus back. It's almost like a meditation practice of having to stay really present in that conversation and not let anything else around you take focus away from what you're doing.
Yeah, we in coaching we call it like self-monitoring. So when you notice your mind, whether it's deviating from the conversation, on what you're going to say next, or if it's like, what am I cooking for dinner tonight? Like you have to come back to your client and remain focused. And it's natural for your brain to wander. It's a matter of it's developing the muscle to pull it back to
Yep.
what's happening there in the moment.
Have there been things that you have learned with Habitual that you brought to Leader's Edge or Leader's Edge that you brought back to Habitual?
Yeah, I think there's such an overlap. Of course, when I'm writing curriculum or I am developing, content, slides, whatever, I do pull a lot from my interviews. I do think about the women that I have featured and some of the lessons that they've learned, and bringing that to the table to
Yep.
talk about real life experiences, anecdotes essentially, and being able to share that
Mm,
can only support the greater leadership development,
yeah.
direction that we're heading.
Yep.
So I feel sometimes I think I need a hobby that doesn't involve leadership development because I'm doing it all day and then I'm doing it at
Yes.
night. But I think it's easy to do when you love it. It just comes naturally
Yep.
to want to talk about it and to build other people up. So it just sort of overlaps and scaffolds each other.
You mentioned it earlier. In the last year, 2 years, we've seen a lot of conversations around women's rights. You
Mhm.
mentioned Roe v. Wade. Are there conversations that you're seeing happen today in the women's leadership that you're saying this matters. This is the time right now, and especially the year that we are ramping up to November with, that you're
Mhm.
saying these are important conversations. We're seeing more of certain topics here that people
Yeah.
are worried about or wanting to know more about, wanting to work through
Mhm.
these topics and conversations.
Yeah. There are quite a few. I would say the one that's coming to mind immediately is around the mental, emotional, physical load
Mm,
that women are carrying. I've been thinking to myself quite a bit lately about, my own motivator. So no doubt am a fierce feminist, right? I believe in equality and equity for women. I also my whole life and where women have been told we need to break the glass ceiling, right? And so we're doing it and we're doing it and we're trying and and it's exhausting.
yep.
And so to what end are you trying to break the glass ceiling? And how much more can you put on your shoulders? That's a lot of weight to carry. And so it's like I get that it's about empowerment. We want to empower women to break the glass ceiling, and it's also exhausting. And so it's kind of like, when do you give yourself grace? When do you say, you know what, I need a break from this
Yeah.
because I it's tiring.
Yeah.
And that does come up a lot in conversation, whether it's the glass ceiling from like a gender equity conversation, or it's a I'm tired at home. I get home from work and I then have all of this stuff that I need to do and I'm just exhausted. And like, how can I possibly keep doing this?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of conversation that is being had, but needs to happen more about just the severe weight that the majority of women are carrying every single day. And then you want to talk about climbing the corporate ladder. It's like, well, I feel like I'm stuck on this rung because I have so much weight on my shoulders. How am I going to climb to the next rung? And I think that's where we lose a lot of women,
Yeah.
as they climb in their career. Of course, we saw the fallout of the pandemic, but um, I think a lot of women don't see that it's possible, or cannot figure out a way to see how it could ever be possible for them to take the next level if they're in the corporate space. Or some people, women will say, well, you know what, I can't see myself higher in a corporate space, so I am going to go start my own business.
Yeah.
And then that's, of course, a whole new journey.
Yep. I think it's incredibly hard to when there's so many outside things that are pushing on us as well. Like we put a lot on ourselves to get to those places that you were just talking about, but then for us to sit here and go through the times that we're having and we're like, "Oh my gosh, let's just add more to the pile
Mhm.
here." And it is
Mhm.
so incredibly difficult to sit here and say, I can see great progress happening for women, or I can see a future for women in leadership. It's incredibly hard when those things are constantly beat down in a way by people in our society.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a heavy burden to carry
Yes,
all the
absolutely.
time.
I want to ask you with, you being in a leadership position, but also then helping women with leadership. Do you have a reading list? Do you have some books that you are top of mind that you like to suggest to people, or that some of your favorites that you have read?
Yeah. So it's funny because I was thinking about it this morning, how I don't read any like nonfiction books anymore. I think I burned myself out
Yeah.
earlier in my career. I love reading fiction novels. Like I can immediately get lost, and I kind of need it at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Work very hard during the day. I need my brain to like decompress.
Cut off.
But
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay.
So because I'm able to walk the dog or do whatever I need to do and
Yes.
take it in. Um, and there's a bunch of podcasts I think that I would recommend. Let's see
Okay.
what was my last one that I also will do audiobooks. I will listen to
Okay.
audiobooks. Um, I I don't know that this is, well, it is leadership, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus has her podcast Wiser Than Me,
It's so good.
and it is quickly risen to the top of my list. Meghan Markle had done a really nice podcast that didn't end up getting past season one. I really loved that as well because she was featuring strong women leaders.
Yep.
But Julia's is awesome because you're hearing life and leadership lessons from women who are 75 plus. And
Yeah.
it's just beautiful to hear it. Almost every time I listen, I'm like, oh, there's so much life left.
Yeah.
And two, like these incredible women are sharing their lessons, and it's just a really great, it's done really well.
Yeah.
And I always take something away from each episode. I'd also say Mel Robbins has some good stuff. All of these I have to be in the right like
Mine.
mentality, mindset,
Yes.
um, whatnot. But those are the two I would say that I listen to pretty consistently, and occasionally here or there, the daily, just because I admittedly, the world is so heavy
Yeah.
that I don't tune into a lot of news. Again, I have to be in the right mindset.
Yep.
And so I'll pop into the daily, listen to what's happening globally. And then I get my fill and go back to Julia Louis-Dreyfus and have some fun with in Wiser Than Me.
I love it. I always say to everybody, I'm like, if you need a kick in the ass, Mel Robbins is who you
Mel
listen
Robbins.
to.
Yep.
I'm like, it is hands down. I'm like, ever Mel Robbins. She's the one that you listen to.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking of one more, Danielle. Hoda Kotb has a really great podcast. And so when I think about the four that I've just shared, they're on this spectrum of like when I just need like a fresh breath of air, I go to Hoda. When I need a laugh, I go to Julia. When I go to Mel, I get my butt kicked. And then when I go to the Daily, it's like
The
the
rea
world is ending. I need to like know what's happening.
the reality check of the world. I
Yep.
love that. That is a great spectrum to be able to see and listen to. So that's fantastic. I always love getting people's recommendations because everybody has their own tastes and things that they like to listen to or read to, and so it's always interesting to hear what's in everybody's Spotify or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I want to just ask you this last question of just what continues to drive your passion, your love for what you're doing every single day.
I'd be lying if I didn't say my daughter. When I mean, I always knew I was a feminist. I always believed in women. But when I had my daughter, it was, that pivotal moment that was like, well, now I have something greater to work for. And so she's just a reminder every day that there's still work to be done. And my hope is that whatever I creates a I don't want to say an easier path, but um a less of a broken path
Okay.
for her to walk on. I think there's a lot of value in challenge and building resilience, but I also think that it shouldn't have to be as hard as it's been for me and women who have come before me. And so each of us has a responsibility to create a better path for the people who come after us. And so she's just a daily reminder of that for me.
I love that. Miss Jessie Sheridan, thank you so much for joining me today and let me dip my toe into everything that you are doing and what the Leader's
Yeah.
Edge is doing and everything at Habitual. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
You guys, all of Jessie's work is going to be linked down below. You guys can go check out Habitual and all the conversations she's having with incredible women, as well as what the Leader's Edge is doing across the country. And Jessie, just so thank you for joining me and appreciate it.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm so
Yeah.
glad our worlds came together.
Yes, I love it. Two stars aligning right there. I so love
Yeah.
it. Uh, but as always, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys back here next time. Bye, y'all.